everybody, and welcome to the show before the show, the official podcast of Minor League Baseball. I am Sam Dykstra, and I am only Sam Dykstra. We're doing things a little differently this week. It is a short week for most folks with the 4th of July holiday here in the United States on Thursday, and then many people having the day off on Friday. And as I mentioned last week, my co-host Tyler Mon is in Italy on a well-earned vacation. Benjamin Hill is working this week, but it's a short week. We normally come out on Fridays. We're coming out a little bit early because we wanted you guys to have something potentially for your 4th of July travels. Also, it's just a big week for on-field news in terms of minor league baseball. So this is a little bit of a special episode, we're calling it. We're not going to give it a number and treat it like a normal episode. I want Ben and Tyler here if we're going to do that, along with Josh Jackson for Ghosts of the Minors. So we'll return to our normal format next week. But I did want to give you guys something of an episode this week just to talk about all this on-field news. And we'll start with news that broke on Tuesday, which is the announcement of the 2024 All-Star Futures Game rosters. The All-Star Futures Game this year will be held at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas on July 13th. It will be broadcast at 4 p.m. Eastern on MLB Network. That's a slight change. It's been on different streamers over the years in different places. This year, it will be on MLB Network. So definitely keep that in mind when you are trying to find the Futures Game on July 13th, which is a Saturday. So those rosters came out. I just want to run them through them real quick. We'll start with the American League. For the pitchers, we have AJ Blubaugh of the Astros, Caden Dana of the Angels, Ben Kudrna of the Royals, Luis Morales of the A's, Fernando Perez of the Blue Jays, Winston Santos of the Rangers, Noah Schultz of the White Sox, Brock Selvage of the Yankees, and Emiliano Teodo of the Rangers. So 2 Rangers represented on the AL pitching side. Among their catchers, Samuel Basallo of the Orioles, Harry Ford of the Mariners, and Kyle Teel of the Red Sox. All 3 are top 100 prospects. For the infielders in the American League, it's the Rays, Xavier Isaac, the Twins, Brooks Lee, the Tigers, Hao-Yu Lee, the Red Sox, Marcelo Meyer, the White Sox, Colson Montgomery, the Guardians, Ralphie Velazquez, the Rangers, Sebastian Walcott, and the Mariners, Cole Young. And the outfield group, Jason Churio of the Guardians, Max Clark of the Tigers, Gavin Cross of the Royals, Spencer Jones of the Yankees, and Chandler Simpson of the Tampa Bay Rays. There are 2 inactive selections as part of the AL group, and those are Roman Anthony and Trey Morgan, and I'm going to circle back to those guys here in a little bit. But just for the National League side, all you NL fans out there, pitchers for the senior circuit are the Pirates' Bubba Chandler, the Rockies' Chase Dollander, the Cardinals' Tink Hence, the Reds' Rhett Lauder, the Cardinals' Quinn Matthews, the Marlins' Noble Meyer, the Padres' Robbie Snelling, the Mets' Brandon Sproat, and the Marlins' Thomas White. The 3 catchers for the NL are the Braves' Drake Baldwin, the Dodgers' Tyrone Lorenzo, and the Padres' Ethan Salas. Infielders for the NL, Reds' Cam Collier, the D-backs Davison De Los Santos, the Giants' Bryce Eldridge, the Pirates' Tamar Johnson, the Phillies' Aiden Miller, the Dodgers' Gerald Perez, the Brewers' Cooper Pratt, the Cubs' Matt Shaw. And then the outfielders for the senior circuit, the Cubs' Owen Casey, the Phillies' Justin Crawford, and the Nationals' Dylan Cruz, the D-backs Drew Jones, and the Nationals' James Wood, and we will come back to him as well. And the inactive selections are of the Cubs, Moises Ballesteros, and Brady House of the Washington Nationals. Now, those inactive selections, those are going to be guys who are participating in the Futures Skills Showcase, which is a new event this year, that will be taking place after the Futures Game itself. The Skills Showcase is just for hitters. It's going to be a few different competitions. The first one is Hit It Here, in which you're aiming for targets on the field, including bunts, if you're into bunts. The second round is Call Your Shot. So you have to say, I'm going to be hitting this one to left. I'm going to be hitting this one to center. I'm going to be hitting that one to right, and you get points for that. And then the third round is Swing for the Fences, which is exactly as it sounds. These players are going to try to be hitting home runs. You get more points for an oppo shot than a pulled shot or a shot to center field. You get 6 points for a pulled shot, 6 to center field, and 12 if you go oppo. So it's just something to keep in mind. The participants in that future skills showcase, there are 8 of them this year, including the 4 that I mentioned that are interactive selections. So the American League, Brooks Lee of the Twins, Sebastian Walcott of the Rangers, Roman Anthony of the Red Sox, and Trey Morgan of the Rays. And then on the National League side, Cam Collier of the Reds, Tamar Johnson of the Pirates, Moises Ballesteros of the Cubs, and Brady House of the Nationals. So if you're looking at this and trying to decide who's going to be better. It's tough for me to figure that out right now. I think the AL is a little bit loaded. They've got Marcelo Meyer, who is the number 7 prospect. Participating Max Clark is number 10, Samuel Basayo, number 12, Brooks Lee, number 13, Colson Montgomery, number 16. But on the NL side, the 2 most prominent prospects might be Dylan Cruz, who's number 4 on our list, and Ethan Salas at number 6. I'm really interested to see how some of these arms are going to certainly work. I mean, the National League could just pump out top 100 prospects all afternoon. I think every single one that they have on the pitching side is a top 100 prospect after our last update. And yes, I can confirm that. The AL is a little weaker on the pitching side, so maybe in a 7-inning contest like this, you give the advantage to the NL if they're just going to be pumping out arms. I mean, imagine giving the ball from Bubba Chandler to Tink Hence to Noble Meyer to Robbie Snelling to mix it up with a left-hander, going to another left-hander and Thomas White. I mean, it's real depth here on the NL side. So I might like the AL bats overall a little bit more, but I think the NL has the advantage on the pitching side. And when it is just a 7-inning game like this, and guys are on pretty strict pitch limits and innings limits, I'm not saying they're going to let it fly because they don't want to get hurt in a exhibition like this, but they can be a little bit more out there with how they pitch and the stuff they kind of show off. So usually pitching tends to beat hitting in games like this. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see. I might prefer the NL just for that reason as of right now. If I were to pick a favorite in the skills showcase, I think it might be Roman Anthony, somebody who's shown really good power this year at Double-A in his second full season. He's always been a good hitter going back to last year when he climbed 3 levels in the Red Sox system. I think he can do well calling a shot. I think he can flex power in round 3. I think aiming for those targets shouldn't be a big problem for him. I'll also throw out Brooks Lee. I mean, I'm not really sticking my head out much here when I'm picking the number 13 and number 14 prospects in the game to win the showcase. But I think Brooks Lee, he has shown some power recently for St. Paul as he's knocking on the door. Anytime we tweet about Brooks Lee, it's always followed by a bunch of fans asking when is he going to get called up. Unfortunately, he plays shortstop in an organization that has Carlos Correa. I know he suffered an injury the other day. Royce Lewis, another capable infielder for the Twins. So finding a spot for Brooks Lee could be a little bit difficult. But he's got the bat control. I think in a BP setting, he can hit the ball hard and consistently and aim for the fences. But yeah, those would be my 2 picks. So that's going to be coming down the pipe here in about a week and a half in Arlington, Texas. Always one of the best days of the year, obviously, getting so many of these guys on one field, even if it is a shorter, abbreviated 7-inning contest. And you know, the amount of times we can look back and say like, oh my gosh, this guy was on the field with this guy. And, you know, for one day they were teammates before they became stars. That's always a huge thing to look back on in terms of the All-Star Futures game. I was thinking the other day, you know, about when Pete Alonso homered in Washington in the Futures game and how he hit it. It seemed like a mile high into the stands and left, and everybody kind of getting excited because it had some StatCast data to it. But also, who is this guy going to be? And now here we are years later, Pete Alonso entering his free agent year. It's crazy how time passes. But, you know, this is a real opportunity for these guys to show what they've been doing across all levels of the minors and measuring. They get to measure themselves up against each other. And maybe, you know, talk to each other and steal some things or talk about some things and bring it back to their home clubs. This is a real meeting of the mind situation as well. And I'm really excited to see this skills showcase get off the ground as well. So futures game rosters are out there. That'll be out in a week and a half in terms of the game itself. So mark that down for July 13th. The other thing I want to touch on real quick is at MLB Pipeline, we actually came out with what we call market corrections. Market corrections are a few times a year. We just change up the top 100 a little bit, the top 100 overall prospect rankings. We're not revoting on the entire top 100. We revote on the top 15. But from there, we look at prospects who should move 10 plus spots in either direction, either higher or lower, depending on their performance and what we're seeing, in certain terms of tendencies, in terms of tools, all that jazz. So when we came out with the new top 100, myself, Jim Callis, Jonathan Mayo, we were kicking ourselves a little bit because if Paul Skeens was still a prospect, he would be number one, but he graduated earlier I guess a week ago at this point. So he's not eligible. And yes, it's easy to say he would be number one because we've seen what his stuff can do with the major leagues, but he's been the one who's been pretty consistent everywhere he's gone this year. That's not true of Jackson Holiday, and I understand that. And there's some people who don't think he should be number one overall, or at least some fans who think that, but we're holding the line there. Jackson Holiday is still number one. He's dealt with some elbow issues. Perhaps those explain part of the downturn this year and his struggles swinging at pitches inside the zone, but he's still incredibly young. He was the only qualified hitter at 20 years old at AAA this year, and the fact that he got major league time speaks to how quickly he has been pushed in his career. Hit a homer the other night. The power is trending pretty well. He's still a middle infield prospect who is way ahead of the curve, considering where many other middle infield prospects are his age. So we're holding the line on him at number one. The change we have is James Wood at number two. He leapfrogs over Junior Caminero. It's a good time to talk about James Wood, and I'll pick up that conversation here in a little bit. After he made his major league debut for the Nationals on Monday. Rounding out the top five, Junior Caminero at number three, third baseman / shortstop for the Rays, has battled some quad injuries so far this year, but still hits the ball incredibly hard. Dylan Cruz, last year's number 2 overall pick in the draft, he's number 4. And then Walker Jenkins, the number 5 pick in last year's draft, at number 5. Ethan Salas falls a little bit to number 6, the catcher for the Padres. Our biggest climbers, I'll go through a few of those real quick. Kevin McGonigal, the shortstop / second baseman for the Tigers, climbed 31 spots to number 65. Ballesteros, who I mentioned earlier in the skills showcase, climbed 28 spots from 89 to 61. Lazaro Montes, outfielder for the Mariners, went from 80 to 53. That's 27 spots. Thomas White, left-handed pitcher of the Marlins, went from 85 to 58. And Braden Taylor, first-round pick of the Rays last year, went from 82 to 60 as a power speed threat. Some of the droppers that I can mention here real fast. Mick Abel dropped 36 spots. He went from 58 to 94. Marco Luciano, the shortstop for the Giants, went from 41 to 76. Robbie Snelling went from 24 to 47. That's a drop to 23 spots. And Tamar Johnson, second baseman / shortstop for the Pirates, went from 57 to 77. We had some other players drop out of the top 100 completely. Gabriel Gonzalez of the Twins, Thomas Saggese of the Cardinals, Roderick Arias of the Yankees, Yoandy Morales of the Nationals, Sterling Thompson of the Rockies, and Victor Scott II of the Cardinals. I run through all of this in a story for MLB.com, so I encourage you to check that out if you're looking for some of the reasoning. A lot of this is just performance-based, right? I mean, I just listed off a whole bunch of hitters, and they're all hitters, actually, who we moved out, and they're just not guys meeting their ceilings. Victor Scott II, made the opening day roster for the Cardinals a few months back, and everybody was very excited to see that happen. He led the minor leagues in steals last year. But the impact hasn't been there at the major league level. It hasn't been there at AAA either. That's never been his game, really, is showing power. But, in terms of overall offensive performance, it isn't there either. So even though he is such a good runner and such a good defender in center, it just became tougher and tougher to keep him on this list. And that's just one of those guys. Sterling Thompson is a bat-only prospect, really, in the Rocky system, and he hasn't come around. Yoandy Morales has been injured with a thumb injury. He was aggressively pushed to Double-A, That hasn't really worked out. Arias has some severe issues with contact in the zone for the Yankees, even though he's really toolsy. I could see him making his way back on this list at some point, but the hit tool is a major question. It's Thomas DeJacy, somebody who is, again, bat only, really only a bat only prospect, but did exceptionally well at Double-A last year and made Triple-A between the Rangers and Cardinals systems. But the I don't want to say the wheels have come off, but for somebody who needs to hit, he just hasn't done that this year at AAA Memphis. And Gabriel Gonzalez has been injured for part of the year with a back strain. Hasn't struck out a lot in the Twin system. He came over from the Mariners in an offseason deal, but he hasn't shown tremendous power. He's probably going to be a corner outfield spot. We kind of want to see him play his way back on here. For somebody who played a good chunk of high A last year and struggled, he hasn't really taken off back at that level this year in ways we would hope. And then he's sat for a good long while now too. Although he's back, I believe he's back with high A now. He was certainly rehabbing recently. So we'll keep an eye on Gabriel Gonzalez. There's certainly a chance he will play his way back onto this. We had some other guys added to the list. I'll run through those real fast, just so you have their names handy. And these are guys who are, for the most part, in the midst of a breakout season. Luke Keeschel of the Twins, second baseman / outfielder. Cooper Pratt, shortstop of the Brewers, who I like a real lot. Got some comps to Gunnar Henderson when he was coming in through the draft process. The Brewers might have gotten a steal there. Hasn't shown the power of Gunnar Henderson by any means so far, but hits the ball really well. And I've gotten really good reviews on his defense at shortstop and his throws from deep in the hole. Spencer Schwellenbach, right-hander for the Braves, is new at number 97. He's debuted for the Braves. Brandon Sproat, right-hander for the Mets. You might know him as the guy who the Mets have drafted twice now. They couldn't sign him in 2022, so they redrafted him in 2023. He's absolutely taken off between high A and double A this year with ERAs below 2 at both stops. Hayden Birdsong of the Giants recently debuted, and then Quinn Matthews, left-hander of the Cardinals, rounds out our new faces at number 100. Quinn Matthews, you might remember at Stanford, through a game in the postseason in which he had close to 150 pitches, if memory serves off the top of my head. It was one for the books, we'll put it that way, but that was basically the only way he was known for a good time there. Cardinals took him in last year's draft, got him into their pipeline, got him working with some of their pitching coordinators, and his velocity has jumped a good amount this year. He's now on his third level at Double-A Springfield. The changeup's really good. Slider and curveball show promise. It's a real well-rounded set for Quinn Matthews. And if you can hold this velocity, and he has now for at least 3 months, that could be a huge get as a senior sign for the Cardinals. So those are the additions to our top 100. Go check it out, MLB.com/prospects. You'll get to dive into our top 100 completely, or read my write-up at MLB.com/pipeline for more on who got added to the list, who fell off, who moved up, who moved down. This is going to be our last update for a little bit. Every year we update the top 30s completely and then the top 100 completely in August after the MLB draft signing deadline, which will be in early August as well. So that'll be our next update. I know that the draft happens between now and then the trade deadline happens between now and then. So there will be a lot more movement just in terms of guys getting added to systems. But that next update in August is when we incorporate draft picks. So that's the next one to look out for. And then, of course, with graduations and trades, we're always moving these lists around as players get added to the system or they get taken out of prospect status. So that is the latest edition of the Market Corrections. And one other thing I said I would return to was just James Wood and his debut. This is kind of basically like a 3-strike segment. I guess let's go with that, right? James Wood called up to the Nationals on Monday, debuted against the Mets at home at TC. He's a Maryland guy, so it was a really cool moment to see that happen. Got a standing ovation as he was walking to the plate, and then hit a single in his first at bat, which was pretty neat. But James Wood, you might know him as the guy the Nationals acquired from the Padres in the Juan Soto blockbuster deal 2 years ago. That trade has been talked about a bunch this week. Obviously, Juan Soto now a Yankee. So if you're a Padres fan, you might be thinking, what did we really get out of that trade? I said it at the time. I'll say it again now. If you have the opportunity to trade for Juan Soto, you trade for Juan Soto, especially for the Padres. At the time, you thought you were getting 2.5 years out of him. He was somebody who could really put you over the top. He was a good player in San Diego's system, or on the major league team. I shouldn't even say the system. He was a really good player for them. Obviously, free agency coming up. Maybe they thought they could talk him into an extension. That didn't work out, and then they traded him to the Yankees while they still could trade him. Um, so you give up somebody like James Wood, you give up Mackenzie Gore, you give up CJ Abrams. You see how that works out, and it's a tough pill to swallow. That being said, at the time, you were getting an absolute superstar. So just keep that in mind. You kind of have to judge these trades as to when they happen. But James Wood has climbed to number 2 in our top 100 because he is one of the toolsiest players that once existed in the minor leagues. Now he's a full-fledged major leaguer, but stands at 6'7". He joins Aaron Judge and O'Neal Cruz as the only position players who are 6'7" or above in the major leagues this year. Hits the ball incredibly hard. He led AAA players with at least 200 plate appearances. There are 201 of those, by the way. He topped that group with a 95.1 mile an hour average exit velocity and 59.1% hard hit rate. Hard hit rate is the percentage of balls hit at 95 miles an hour or above. So James Wood uses his big frame to his advantage. He has really good strength. He squares up balls really well. Again, with that 95.1 mile an hour average exit velocity, there are only 3 players in the majors, only 3 qualifiers in the majors with better average exit velocities this season. And their names you probably expect: Aaron Judge, 97 miles an hour; Shohei Ohtani, 95.5; O'Neal Cruz, 95.2. And that's the list. So there's something to be said for being 6'7", I guess. Maybe we should talk more players who are that tall away from basketball and into baseball. But yeah, James Wood takes that power now to Washington. He's faster than I think a lot of people think he is, or thought he was anyways. The cat's kind of out of the bag at this point. But you look at him, it doesn't look like he's running hard down the line, but he has such huge strides that it's easy plus speed. He had 10 homers and 10 steals for AAA Rochester before joining the Nats in DC. He can play center field pretty well. The Nats aren't going to necessarily do that right now because they have a pretty good center fielder as is, and a fast one at that. But James Wood can play a really good left field, and he's got the arm strength to play in the corner and the power to play in the corner. And he was leading AAA in average at the time he got called up. And a lot of that just comes from the fact that he hits the ball hard. I mean, when you are hitting it as hard as he is, yes, he hits the ball on the ground more than he probably should, especially for somebody with his power. But like he did in that first at bat for the Nats the other night, he can get it through the infield because it's a rocket off the bat. And it's incredibly difficult for infielders to catch balls that are 106, 108 off the bat, like he's capable of showing. So that's how he hit 353 for Rochester. He had a 463 on base percentage as well, and a 1058 OPS in 52 games. Now he takes that to Washington. We'll see what the Nats are going to be this year. They're kind of on that periphery of the NL wild card discussion. It seems like everybody's in that pool, to be honest. But getting him for all of July, all of August, all of September, we'll see what that means for the Nats. Maybe they can add a Dylan Cruz down the line. He's now at AAA as well. But I think, and this has come from a lot of people within the Nationals organization, including Matthew LeCroy, his manager with Rochester. He said, I think you're going to be a key piece of the next team that wins us a championship. So getting James Wood up to the majors now is good. It's great. It's fun for all of us to see. And the fact that he has his first hit out of the way and got to show off a lot of those skills in his debut was terrific. I don't think it's necessarily just a move for this year. I think it's getting James Wood acclimated to the majors. And then we could, even if he has a pretty strong second half and the Nats don't make the postseason, I think next year is a year they really have to start planning to go for it with James Wood as a centerpiece of their core. He already basically was after the spring that he had and after the expectations, but the way he's really come through early on this year, I think big things are ahead for James Wood, and that could mean big things ahead for the Nationals. This is a real turn the page moment for that organization that could really use it. So exciting things in DC, exciting things coming to Arlington next week with the Futures game. That's the news from on-field stuff. this week. We'll be back with Ben and Tyler and Josh next week for our regularly scheduled the show before the show segments. But I just wanted to bring that with you. Happy 4th, wherever you're going. If you're listening to this from outside the United States, happy early July. Happy Futures Game roster announcement week, I guess. But hopefully you took us along with you to the barbecue, to the fireworks, to the beach, wherever life is taking you this week, wherever we found you. If this is your first time listening, please subscribe to the show before the show, wherever you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Megaphone, all these places. We're available everywhere now. And we'll be back with you next week. I've been Sam Dykstra, and enjoy your week.